Let me tell you about the day the universe decided to remind me that karma has a sense of humor and it likes to work overtime. Picture this: the president of my HOA, the same woman who treated our little Maple Ridge neighborhood like her own personal kingdom out there on my front lawn, shrieking at the top of her lungs as two cops tried and failed to calm her down. One officer took a purse to the shoulder, the other got shoved so hard he nearly landed in my azaleas. And me, I just stood there, coffee cup in hand, soaking in the chaos that unfolded because I'd had the audacity to tow her precious SUV off my own driveway. All this because, according to her, my driveway belonged to the HOA, her HOA. The law, of course, said otherwise, but Deborah Karen Callahan never cared much for rules that didn't end with her signature. And in the span of 10 minutes, she went from fake citations and intimidation to getting cuffed in front of a crowd. The kicker, I'd filmed every minute of it, giving Maple Ridge its very own neighborhood legend. But let's roll back a bit. See, I moved into my grandma's house thinking I'd finally catch a break. The place smelled like old books and pine needles the way only Colorado does, and there was a creek out back that could put any meditation app to shame. Grandma Ruth fought tooth and nail against the HOA when they first swept through. Lost that war, but she always said, "Don't let them tell you where to plant your daisies." I wish I'd listened closer. After she passed, Deborah Callahan sent me a sympathy card. If you can call something signed President Maple Ridge HOA and stapled to a copy of the rules a sympathy card. Her reputation. Let's just say most folks called her Karen of the Ridge and not affectionately. My first day, she's at my door, clipboard, artificial smile. No, welcome, just a warning. The HOA doesn't allow visible cracks in the driveway. Affects property value. That was it. No cookies, no casserole, just judgment and a whiff of expensive perfume. I tried to keep my head down, not rock the boat. But it's hard to ignore a person who treats the entire street as her personal parade ground. Tuesday morning, there it was, her shiny white SUV license plate, HOA1, parked across my driveway. Every time I needed to leave there, it was again like a bad magic trick. Sometimes she'd leave notes about shared visual zones, and when I laughed it off, I found a warning notice in my mailbox for excessive grass height. I measured 3 inches. Limit was 4. It wasn't about grass. It wasn't about cracks. It was about control. Everything changed on the morning of my job interview. I'd prepped, pressed my shirt, felt hopeful for the first time in months. Walked outside, blocked in again. Deborah was MIA. No answer on her phone. 10 minutes became 20. My hopes soured into panic. Finally, I grabbed an Uber but showed up late, sweaty and embarrassed. They'd already moved on to the next candidate. That was the last straw. Spent hours that night studying county codes. The next day, I put up a steel sign. Private driveway. No parking violators will be towed. Big, bold, legal. Emailed the HOA, attached my deed, and set up a doorbell cam aimed right at my driveway. She replied, "I am the HOA. You don't make the rules here." I didn't reply. I just waited. Sure enough, she doubled down. Cardboard sign on her dash. "You don't own the street, Nicholas. I'll park wherever I want." So I called Caleb, the tow guy. He looked at my paperwork, shrugged, and said, "Perfectly legal." 10 minutes later, her SUV was gone. The feeling, sweet, fleeting victory. But with someone like Deborah, peace never lasts. Not even an hour passed before I heard her voice, shrill and furious, echoing down the block. She stormed up to my porch, screeching about stolen HOA property, threatening to have my house condemned. I sipped my coffee, tried to keep calm. "You might want to start with a building permit, Karen." And that was it. She lost it, called 911, tried to accuse me of grand theft auto. 2 squad cars lights, spinning officers Ramirez and Chen. Ramirez looked like he'd seen it all before. I handed over my documents, showed the cam footage, and waited. "Everything checks out, ma'am. This is private property." He acted within his rights. Deborah's jaw just about hit the pavement. Her face went red, then purple, and suddenly she was shoving Officer Chen. The next thing anyone knew, the sound of cuffs was echoing through the cul-de-sac. Some people say justice is blind, but sometimes it just needs a little push and a doorbell camera. The next day, Maple Ridge buzzed like a kicked beehive. Gossip group texts, curtains twitching everywhere. Gary from across the street grinned. "You're trending on Nextdoor." Sure enough, the video of Deborah's arrest had gone viral. Comments ran the gamut from "finally someone stood up to her" to "this is what happens when power goes to your head." I expected relief, maybe vindication. Instead, I felt a knot in my gut. Folks like Deborah don't go down easy. Later that day, Paul Bennett, the HOA treasurer, showed up sweaty and anxious. The board was holding an emergency meeting about Deborah. He kept glancing over his shoulder as if expecting her to materialize out of the azaleas. That evening, the community center was packed wall to wall. Hazel Nelson, the previously invisible vice president, called everyone to order, announced Deborah's suspension, and tried to keep the peace as people shouted, argued, and even claimed Deborah was framed. When Hazel pulled me aside afterward, she was calm but wary. "You did everything right," she said, then added almost as a warning, "Deborah has a way of making people forget that rules apply to them too." It got weird fast. Anonymous threats in my mailbox, detergent across my lawn, red spray paint in my garage. "Get out, lawbreaker." Deborah's face on my camera at midnight, just standing, staring, pointing at my driveway sign. Ramirez confirmed she was out on bond her family had paid. And then more letters from the HOA, all fake, all threatening. Hazel and I filed police reports, but Deborah wasn't slowing down. She was unraveling. Court day arrived, and I took the stand. Gave my testimony straight. No venom, no gloating. Let the evidence speak. The judge laid it out plain. This court will not tolerate abuse of authority, whether it comes from public office or a homeowners association. Deborah went pale as the sentence landed no parole for the first 5 years. But that didn't end it. Later, I found an envelope on my porch, HOA. Karen always comes back. The seal was the real deal, meaning her network was still alive. Hazel told me Deborah had done favors for board members, waived their fees, let things slide. Loyalty like that doesn't die overnight. Things escalated again. My garage was vandalized, more signs staked in my yard by strangers. Property under HOA review. Hazel arrived, chased them off, but it was clear Deborah was still pulling strings. That night I collected everything, photos, footage, threats, and sent them to the prosecutor. The police raided Deborah's house, found files with my name maps, even a folder labeled expansion plans. She was obsessed with controlling not just my property, but the whole neighborhood. When she got another 10 years for fraud, we all thought it was finally over. But Maple Ridge got a newsletter unsigned, just the HOA is forever, and so am I. Some called it a prank, some weren't so sure. And then a flash drive turned up in my mailbox full of old HOA documents, emails, proof that Deborah had planned for months to reclassify my driveway as communal property. If she'd pulled it off, towing her SUV would have been illegal. She'd been coming for my land from day one. Hazel and I dug deeper, traced fake letters to Paul Bennett. When police raided his house, he was gone. Car abandoned files inside, all pointing back to Deborah, even from jail. She was running a criminal enterprise, fraud, mail tampering conspiracy. When the feds got involved, Deborah got another 10 years. Paul Flip took a deal. But the system she built, her ghost, lingered. HOA calls in Deborah's voice, emails from my address, warnings about compliance, all routed through an automated system she'd coded herself. Even from behind bars, she was still in charge. Hazel did her best, but the more we cut, the more popped up. When Hazel's house burned, she escaped. Thank God, all that remained in the ashes was the old president's badge. Then I got an official county letter naming me President Reformation Project HOA, thanks to Deborah's forgeries. Flyers appeared overnight, President Nicholas Parker. Meeting at dusk. Some neighbors smiled, some stared like I was cursed. Late one night in desperation, I logged into the old HOA portal with Deborah's birth year as the password. "Welcome back, President Callahan." A chat box blinked open. "Took you long enough." I stared at the screen, breath stuck in my throat. Deborah's digital shadow alive and well. And here's the lesson that hit me hardest. Power never really goes away. You can beat a tyrant, arrest a bully, delete their files. But if you let fear or pride or the system itself turn you into the villain, then it wins. Everyone loses. I don't know if Maple Ridge will ever fully heal. Hazel moved on, but I stayed, maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of hope. The lawns are wilder now, the rules mostly forgotten. Some folks say I should run the new board. I just laugh. Once was enough. So let me ask you, where do you draw the line between order and obsession? Ever gone toe-to-toe with a little tyrant hiding behind bylaws? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me where you're watching from, and share your own HOA nightmares. Because if I've learned anything, it's this. Sometimes the scariest ghosts aren't dead. They're just waiting for the next board meeting.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.